Welcome to the Rusted Garden Homestead. Today's video is all about planting peas. It is August 22nd. We're going to talk about planting fall peas and how that's a little bit different than planting spring peas, but we're also going to talk about that. I'm going to be putting peas into the greenhouse. You can also do this outside, and everything's going to vary a little bit based on where you are right now. I'm in Maryland, Zone 7. Soil outside is warm, perfect for planting seeds directly out there if you want to do that. I'll be talking about that. A couple of things that I wanted to cover first is, in the fall, when you're going from August into the fall, you can really direct sow your peas. The soil is nice and warm, it's draining well. That extra warmth is something that the peas don't really like to mature into, but they really like it for seed starting. So if you have the space out in your garden, you can kind of follow what I'm doing today and just direct seed. Some of the reasons you may decide to seed start your peas in August for a fall planting is because you just don't have room in your garden yet. Maybe you don't have any containers, you don't have space in your earth beds. You can start them in containers, and I just recommend starting them in something like this with a little more size to the cell. You can use yogurt cups, you can really use anything. The root systems grow really quickly, and you could put in 1 seed or 2 seed per cell. These should probably grow in here about 2 weeks, and then you can kind of get them right into whatever space you have in your fall garden. In the spring, I like to seed start these indoors because the soil is so much colder. In my area, it's frozen, it's cold, it's not draining well because of just the winter temperatures. It's very soggy, cold, damp. 3 words I want to stress. If you put seeds into that, a lot of times they don't germinate well, they get moldy, they don't do well. So I like to have peas seed started for early mid-March, I guess, planting in my zone. That's Maryland Zone 7. As it gets later into the spring and I can work the soil, I will also put some seeds in, and this way I get my first crops of the transplants producing peas, and then they're followed up by the peas that I started as seeds in the ground. And again, you don't really want to put peas into really cold, soggy soil. They don't do that well. So maybe in the spring you want to do transplants. So we're going to use this space. You can kind of just take this model and apply it to your garden beds in the earth beds, or you can apply it to your containers. First thing I want to do is just kind of mix this up a little bit. So what do peas like? They like the cooler temperatures. So a couple things to understand is, one, pea leaves, the stems, they can actually take a frost. So if you get a frost at night, the leaves freeze a little bit, they're going to be perfectly fine in the morning. So this is why they're cool weather crops. You can plant them early in the spring, frost comes, the plants are fine. As spring begins to warm up, soil temperatures are getting to 50, 60 degrees, day temperatures are 70 degrees, the peas really take off, they flower, and they produce the pods. In the summer, the soil is really too warm to get fully mature peas. That's why you can't grow peas really in May or in June, July, August here. It's too hot in Maryland Zone 7. But August is a great time for them to germinate. So they're germinating when the soil temps are like 90 degrees, it's too warm. Days could be in the 90s, 80s. You're kind of timing it. So when you put your seeds in August, in about 3 or 4 weeks, you want the day temperatures to be coming down to those fall temps of about 70-degree days, 50, 60-degree nights. So you're just using the warmth of summer to get these germinated. I hope that makes sense. And then the frost can come, you know, in October, November. The plants are fine. When a hard frost comes, that's when they're going to die off. So let's just talk about principles. So first thing, if you want to grow in containers, that's a 5-gallon container. Something about that size is perfect. You can fill this with any potting mix that you want, whatever fits your budget. You can check the video descriptions. I'll put some videos on there on how to make your own potting mix, and also talk a little bit about the bag mixes you buy at stores. Maybe I'll save you some money. So I just flipped this over and made a circle. If you were going to plant peas into the 5-gallon bucket, just fill the soil to here, make sure there's drainage, and you're just going to do one about 1/2 inch deep, 3, 4, 5, 6 holes just like that. You could put in 1 or 2 peas. Somewhere between 6 and 8 is probably best, but you can overcrowd peas. They really grow well. They're going to go straight up. They have hollow stems, so you would want to put in a couple tree branches, maybe 1 or 2, or some small stakes that are about 3 or 4 feet tall. So they're up here, and the peas will actually climb up them. It'll support the peas, and that's perfect. This is a perfect way to do containers. Now, even though I'm in a greenhouse, You would do the same thing out in your raised beds or in your earth beds. And you can do anything from 2 inches apart to 4 inches apart. People always ask the distance. It doesn't matter that much, really. They do really well crowded together, but somewhere between 2 and 4 inches. I'll explain that more in a second. I like to do a row that's about this wide. It's about the length of my arm so that I can reach in and pick the peas. If you made it a kind of a bigger square, it's really hard to get into the center of the peas. So something like this, 2 feet wide. And again, I would just do finger holes about 1/2 inch deep. You could do 2 inches, you could do 4 inches, and I think, what is that? 5 centimeters or 10 centimeters apart. Just something like this going across. If you do a bigger space, say maybe 4 inches, you could put 2 peas in each hole. If you're gonna do something like I prefer to do, maybe every 2 inches, it doesn't have to be exact, 1/2 inch deep, 5 centimeters, just like that. I'm going to show you the whole row. This is about how I set up my peas out in my earth beds and in my raised beds. Notice I don't have any pea seeds with me right now. I like to set up the soil, all the finger holes first, and then I come in and I just drop the peas in. But it would be just something like that. That would be one planting. Now I love peas, so I would probably do a space all the way down to here for my first wave. After these are growing for 2 or 3 weeks, I would do another wave. This way I'm just not getting all the peas at the same time. So that's basically the setup that I use in my earth beds or in my raised beds. If you were going to do transplants, you're just lightly digging a hole, you pop the transplant in, and you just put the soil right to the same level that's here in the seed starting cell. Nothing fancy. And again, 2 to 4 inches apart. It really doesn't matter that much. Peas fix their own nitrogen, so they have a relationship with the atmosphere and microbes and stuff, so the root system can pull in nitrogen. So you don't have to over prepare your soil with fancy fertilizers. There's compost in here. You can put down some organic granular. You don't have to over worry about it. You just want it to be nice and loose, and you want it to drain well. The seeds themselves don't like sitting in damp soil. Once these are in, I'm going to give them a little bit of fish emulsion. That's nitrogen, some phosphorus, some potassium, just something basic to soak them in, have that fertilizer available, and then I really let my pea plants go after that. I don't do much for fertilizing them. So let me get the seeds, we'll plant up this space, and we'll talk just a little bit more about what else? Peas. So there's basically 3 types of peas. You have your snap pea, which is the edible pod and fully mature peas on the inside. You have your snow type peas, which are used in stir fries and for cooking. They're the flat pod with immature peas inside. And then you have your shelling peas, which I don't have an example here, but you can't eat the shell, but the peas inside are delicious. And usually there's like anywhere from 8 to 12 peas inside of there. They're your shelling peas basically. So in your earth beds or in the ground, I basically set it up just like this. I put the peas in. Spacing here, I don't know, there's about 6 holes in each row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rows going across. I like that. With 6 holes, 1, 2, 3 posts in here, and I would put the post right here, and then I would put them over here, and then maybe over here too. You just want to have these supports, because if the peas will cling to each other and grow, but if the wind comes and they don't have support, they're just going to snap. They have hollow stems. They're not going to snap and not grow. They're just going to bend over, and it's just a mess. So put in the supports. So once you have it like this, you want to make sure these are a little bit better, about 1/2 inch deep, like that. These are a little bit shallow, so you would just push them in to 1/2 inch. It doesn't have to be perfect, no more than 1 inch deep. And then we just cover everything over, and that's how easy it is to really plant peas. Like that one's too close to the surface. Get it down to that 1/2 inch mark. And then they're set up nicely. We'll finish up watering this in. Over here, I put in some of the transplants, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4 groupings, so I'm using 2 stakes. There's less peas in here, but in some places there are 2 plants coming up, and you can really do it either way. Don't over worry about it. What I wanted to show you today is August 22nd. So these were put in on August 6th. So what is that? 16 days. They grow really fast. So by the time, or from the time that you put them into the seed cells, you really want to get these into the ground in about 2 weeks to 3 weeks, because the root systems really grow quickly. Gently loosen them up. You would just move the soil away, drop it in, You don't have to be fragile. Watch. Just push them in. They're good to go. We're going to water them in. So you don't want these sitting in here for 4 weeks. So a couple of things again to keep in mind. In the summer, growing fall peas, we're putting them in when the soil is 80, 90 degrees. Too warm for them to fully mature and do their thing. But warm enough that they germinate really quickly, really within probably 3 to 5 days. And then over the next 3 weeks or 4 weeks, you want the cooler rains to be coming, soil temperature getting down to the 60 degrees, day temperatures dropping into the 70s, and your peas are going to do really, really well. In the spring, it's opposite. You're going from really cold to the warmer times of spring. So in spring, I like to use the transplants. In the fall, I like to direct seed because they sprout and grow so quickly. All right, so let's water these in. One of the questions I get often, which is really hard to answer, is how often do I water a garden? It varies greatly on the temperatures, rainfall, all of that. So if you're planting spring peas, if this were the spring, I'm going to just water them in really well at planting. Because the soil temperature is cold, there's not a lot of hot sun, this isn't going to really evaporate quickly. So I may just have to do this once or twice a week in early spring. You don't want the pea seeds to be overly soggy sitting in water. In August, I'm going to have to do what you just saw probably every other day because the day temperatures are still in the 90s. The sun beats down here, bakes the soil, it dries out quickly. So for that first really 10 to 14 days in the fall, August, for the fall planting, you're probably watering every other day. Same thing with transplants. There's less risk in the spring that you're going to overwater or cause problems by too much water in the spring with transplants. But you know, maybe 2 or 3 times a week, you just want these to stay well hydrated. But spring is much different than the summer planting for the fall. And this is pretty much the setup. Peas are really easy to grow. I highly encourage you to give them a try. Experiment. If it doesn't go well, take notes. Next year will be better. But remember, you can plant peas now in August, September for a fall crop, and you can plant them again in the spring for a spring crop. Thanks for watching. Please check out my seed shop at therustedgarden.com and give peas a try. You'll be really satisfied with how sweet they are. Nothing beats a fresh picked pea.